Hello and welcome to Reform Thinking. I'm really glad you joined us today. We are doing a deep dive into something that, well, it tends to haunt anyone who takes their faith seriously.
Yeah, it really does.
We are looking at a specific chapter from C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity.
It's great to be here. And yes, this chapter, Nice People or New Men, is a heavy hitter.
Oh, absolutely.
It's one of those texts that acts like a mirror. You think you're reading about other people, and then suddenly you realize, oh, wait, I'm reading about myself.
It's also the chapter that addresses what I think is the single biggest barrier to entry for the Christian faith.
The hypocrite objection.
Thought on. You know how it goes? You're talking to a skeptic, or maybe you're just scrolling through social media, and someone says, look, if Christianity is the truth, and if the Holy Spirit is supposed to change people,
Right.
why is my atheist neighbor, who never steps foot in a church, so much kinder, more generous, and just generally more pleasant than that guy I know who is a deacon at First Baptist?
It's the classic nice atheist versus the mean Christian dilemma. And we have to be honest here. It's a valid question.
It is.
It's not just a straw man that skeptics set up to knock down. We see it in reality. We see the church split over petty arguments. We see believers acting with arrogance or spite.
Unbelievable spite sometimes.
Right, and then we look at the secular world and see people doing incredible humanitarian work or just being good neighbors.
It feels like false advertising.
Yeah, it does.
It's like buying a cleaning product that claims to remove all stains. You use it, and the stain is still there.
And meanwhile, the guy next door is using nothing but water, and his shirt is cleaner than yours.
Right. It makes you question the product entirely.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to take this apart.
We really need to unpack it.
We need to figure out the difference between niceness, which Lewis argues is often just biological luck, and newness, which is spiritual regeneration.
And we have to confront a very uncomfortable reformed reality here. God might not be as impressed with our natural niceness as we are.
Let's get into the text then. Lewis starts in a surprising place for an apologist.
He really does.
He doesn't start by defending the church. He starts by agreeing with the critic.
He doesn't try to gaslight the skeptic at all. He says, look, if a person claims to be converted, claims to have been regenerated by the Holy Spirit, but their behavior remains snobbish, spiteful, envious, or ambitious, then the outside world is totally justified in being skeptical.
He validates the world's judgment.
Completely. In our theological tradition, we talk about sanctification.
The ongoing process of becoming holy.
Right. If you claim justification, that you've been made right with God, but there is zero sanctification evident in your life, something is terribly wrong.
Dead faith.
Precisely. Lewis says fine feelings, fresh insights, or a greater interest in religion mean nothing unless they make our actual behavior better.
That is a harsh reality check.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of us substitute the culture of church for the change of character.
All the time.
We think because we listen to worship music in the car or, because we have the right theological books on our shelf that we're doing the work.
But Lewis uses this incredible medical analogy. He compares it to an illness and a thermometer.
Unpack that for us.
Imagine you have a fever. You take a pill. You might tell your spouse, oh, I feel a bit better. But if the thermometer shows your temperature is still going up, then objectively, you aren't better.
The virus is still winning.
Exactly. In same way, if our spiritual fever, our sin nature isn't breaking, then those fine feelings we get during a Sunday sermon are just a placebo. They aren't the cure.
He brings up a slogan from the war to illustrate this. Since he was writing this during or just after World War II, everyone in his audience knew the posters that said, "Careless talk costs lives."
Meaning, don't gossip about troop movements or ships sailing because spies are listening and soldiers will die.
But Lewis flips it.
He flips it to, careless lives cost talk.
That hits incredibly close to home. It puts the burden of proof right on us.
It means that when we, as Christians, live carelessly, when we are rude to the waiter, when we cheat on our taxes, when we lose our temper in traffic, we are causing the world to talk.
And that talk isn't just gossip.
No, it's talk that discredits the gospel. We are handing ammunition directly to the enemy.
It reminds me of the scriptural warning about the Gentiles blaspheming God because of the behavior of his people. We literally become the stumbling block.
Lewis alludes to the words of Jesus here. A tree is known by its fruit. It's the proof of the pudding. If the fruit is rotten, you have to assume the tree is diseased.
So he starts by saying, yes, skeptic, you are right. If the behavior doesn't change, you have every right to doubt the conversion.
He gives the critic the first round, but then he pivots.
And this is where his intellect really shines.
It is. He says that while the critic is right to demand change, the way the world judges that change is often illogical.
Unreasonable, even.
Because the world wants a binary reality. They want a simple spreadsheet.
Column A and column B.
Right. Column A is Christians, and they should all be 100% virtuous, kind, and patient. Column B is non-Christians, and they should all be nasty and selfish.
But since the data doesn't fit that spreadsheet, since we see nice atheists and nasty Christians, the world throws up its hands and says the whole system is broken.
But reality isn't a spreadsheet, it's a vector. Lewis introduces the concept of people being in motion.
This is a crucial point for you listening to grasp.
Nobody is static. At any given moment, a human soul is moving.
Think of it like physics. It's not just about your position on the graph, it's about your velocity in your direction.
You might have a person who calls themselves a Christian. Maybe they are a church elder, but internally, the needle of their heart is slowly drifting away from God.
They are becoming more cynical, more prideful.
Their momentum is moving away. Conversely, you might have someone who is currently an atheist or a pagan, but they are slowly moving toward the light.
Lewis gives that example of the Buddhist, which I think we need to handle carefully from our Reformed perspective.
We definitely do. He talks about a Buddhist of goodwill who is led by God's secret influence.
Now, this isn't Lewis saying all roads lead to heaven. We hold to the exclusivity of Christ.
Right. But what Lewis is describing here is the sovereignty of God in drawing a person before they even know who is drawing them.
We might call this the preparatory work of the Spirit, irresistible grace in its early stages.
Yes. A person outside the visible church might be concentrating on mercy or truth, which are God's attributes. They might be stumbling toward Christ without knowing his name yet.
And that person, even if they currently hold the wrong label, might be closer to the kingdom in the posture of their heart than the person sitting in the front pew who is hard-hearted and stagnant.
It completely disrupts our labeling system. We want to judge based on the jersey someone is wearing.
He's on Team Christian, he must be good. She's on Team Atheist, she must be bad.
Lewis says that is useless because we are usually relying on stereotypes found in novels and newspapers.
He calls it book chatter. We compare an idealized saint with a villainous atheist, or a heroic, free-thinking atheist with a hypocritical Inquisition-style Christian.
It's fiction. He insists we must come down to brass tacks.
I love that phrase, brass tacks. It means the messy reality of the actual people you know.
If you want to make a fair comparison, you can't compare Christians in general with atheists in general. You have to compare a specific Christian, let's say your neighbor down the street, with a specific atheist you actually know.
And this leads to his most famous argument in this chapter, the toothpaste analogy.
The white smile toothpaste analogy, this is the part that I think unlocks the whole problem.
It's simple, but incredibly effective. Let's walk through it.
Imagine a brand of toothpaste that claims to improve teeth. That's the promise. Now, suppose I use it religiously twice a day, but I have terrible teeth.
You inherited soft enamel from your parents.
Right. I grew up without fluoride, my teeth are crooked, and I'm prone to cavities.
So you're the faithful user. Now look at a healthy young man who never uses toothpaste at all. He ignores dental hygiene completely, but he has perfect genetics.
He has rock-hard enamel, gleaming white teeth, a perfect smile.
The skeptic looks at you, toothpaste user with the bad teeth, and looks at the non-user with the perfect smile and says, see? The toothpaste is a scam.
It doesn't work. If it works, your teeth will be better than his.
But that is a massive logic error.
It really is. The test is not comparing user A to non-user B. The variables are far too different.
The test is, are my teeth better than they would be if I didn't use the toothpaste?
That's the key. If I stopped using the toothpaste, my teeth might fall out completely. The toothpaste is working. It's keeping a disaster from becoming a catastrophe.
And for the other guy, the one with the perfect natural teeth, the question is, what would his teeth look like if he did start using the toothpaste?
They might be positively blinding.
This shifts the entire ground of the argument. It makes it personal and relative to the starting point. We aren't all starting the race from the same line.
And to illustrate this on a human level, Lewis introduces two characters, Miss Bates and Dick Firkin.
These are great archetypes. We all know a Miss Bates.
We do.
She's a Christian, a believer. But let's be honest. She's hard to be around. She has an unkind tongue. She's narrow-minded.
She's the person who is always offended, always complaining, maybe a bit neurotic.
She has jangled nerves, as Lewis puts it. She's essentially a miserable person to interact with.
And then you have Dick Firkin.
Dick is the guy everyone likes. He's an unbeliever. He has zero interest in God. but he has a placid temper.
He's friendly.
He's the guy who helps you move your couch on a Saturday and doesn't complain. He buys the first round of drinks. He's naturally nice.
The world looks at Miss Bates and says, she's a Christian, no thanks, and looks at Dick and says, he's not. Well, he seems fine without it.
They conclude Christianity is nonsense because Dick is clearly the better human specimen.
But applying the toothpaste logic, the question is not, is Miss Bates nicer than Dick?
Right.
The question is Miss Bates nicer than she would be without Christ?
That is a terrifying thought. If she is that prickly, that judgmental, that neurotic with the restraining grace of God in her life,
Imagine her without it.
she might be a monster. She might be absolutely unbearable.
So Christianity might be the only thing keeping Miss Bates from being a complete sociopath.
Precisely. And for Dix, the question is, what would he be like if he did turn to Christ?
He's already nice, but imagine that natural niceness infused with supernatural charity. He could be a saint.
This leads into the factory metaphor, which I think is essential for understanding how God judges us versus how we judge each other.
We judge the product. God judges the effort.
Let's break down that factory analogy.
Think of a factory. You have the output, what the factory produces. That's the visible behavior, the niceness we see.
And then you have the plant.
The plant, the machinery, the equipment, the working conditions. That's your natural temperament, your genetics, your upbringing, your brain chemistry.
So let's look at Miss Bates as a factory.
Miss Bates is running a factory that has been through a war.
The roof is leaking.
The machinery is rusted and dates back to the 1920s. The workers are on strike. It is a total disaster in there. Maybe she had a traumatic childhood. Maybe she has a severe chemical imbalance.
The fact that this factory turns out anything at all is a miracle.
If the manager of that factory, which represents her will, can produce even one decent widget a day, that manager is working incredibly hard. They are sweating blood just to get that one widget out the door.
And then there's Dick Firkin's factory.
Dick is running a state-of-the-art facility. Brand new robots, climate control, happy workers, a perfect supply chain. He inherited a Ferrari of a temperament.
So for him to produce high output is easy.
He can turn out 1,000 widgets a day while sipping coffee. But, and here's the kicker, perhaps the output, while high, is actually lower than it should be given the quality of the machinery.
If he's producing 1,000 widgets, maybe he should be producing 5,000.
So the manager of Factory B, Dick, is actually lazy. He's coasting on the quality of the equipment.
And the manager of the universe, God, judges the management, not just the machinery.
He knows what raw materials Miss Bates was handed. He knows she was given a broken machine. He knows Dick was given a first-class setup.
This completely changes how we view people in the pews next to us. I might look at a grumpy believer and judge them, thinking, you should be more joyful.
But God might be saying, you have no idea how much effort it took for them just to show up today and not scream at someone.
You have no idea how much grace was required to keep them from biting your head off.
It calls for profound charity in our judgment of others.
Wait, let's use a different word. It calls for massive charity. We simply do not know the handicap they are playing with.
But this brings up a rather shocking point Lewis makes. He says that niceness, the thing we value so highly, the thing we want our neighbors to be, is often just biology.
It's digestion.
It sounds reductionist, but he's right. Good digestion, stable nerves, proper serotonin levels. A lot of what we call virtue is actually just good health.
If you have a stomachache or a migraine or you didn't sleep, it is much harder to be nice.
Lewis is making a theological distinction here between nature and grace. The Reformed view fits perfectly. These natural qualities, Dick's friendly disposition, his lack of anxiety, these are gifts from God.
They are part of God's common grace.
So Dick thinks he is just a good guy. He pats himself on the back for being chill, but actually, he is enjoying a gift from the God he ignores.
He is breathing God's air and using God's serotonin to feel good about himself while refusing to acknowledge the giver.
It costs God nothing to create a nice temperament in a human, just like it costs him nothing to create a beautiful sunset or good bread. These are natural goods.
But here is the critical distinction. These natural gifts are not the same as spiritual life.
Lewis makes a stark contrast between the cost of creating nice things and the cost of converting a rebellious will.
Let's linger on that word, cost.
To create a galaxy costs God nothing. He speaks, and it is. To create a pleasant personality costs him nothing. But to convert a rebellious human will, to turn a stone heart into a heart of flesh,
That cost him the crucifixion.
that is the price of the new man.
And he talks about the transience of nature. This is sobering for anyone relying on their own good temperament. He says natural niceness will decompose.
It's a hard truth. When you die, your digestion dies, your hormones die, your nervous system shuts down.
If your goodness was entirely based on those biological factors, it evaporates.
It's not eternal. It's like a sunset, a beautiful pattern of colors that fades when the sun goes down. If your kindness was just a result of a good night's sleep and a lack of stress, it won't survive the grave.
So if Dick Firkin relies on his natural niceness, he is relying on something that won't last. He's building his house on sand.
And there is a paradox of ownership here. As long as Dick thinks his niceness is his own, like, I'm just a good guy, I did this, it isn't really his, it's just the luck of the draw.
It only becomes truly his when he realizes it is a gift from God and offers it back.
Lord, thank you for this easygoing temper. I didn't earn it. I give it to you to use for your glory.
The only things we can keep are the things we freely give to God. If we grip them tight, claiming them as our own achievement, they turn to dust in our hands.
This moves us into the discussion of the will. Lewis uses the image of a compass needle.
This is a pivotal moment in the chapter. We have talked about the machinery, the nature, but now we must talk about the compass needle, the will.
The machinery is what you are, your psychology, your body. The needle is what you choose.
The needle is trembling. It's trying to find north.
God is waiting for one thing. Will the needle swing north? Will the human will orient itself toward God?
And Lewis makes the distinction here about coercion. He says God can help it swing, but he cannot force it by a mere act of power. Wait, simply by an act of brute force.
If he forced it, it would no longer be a will, it would be a machine.
This is where we see the interplay of God's sovereignty and human agency. In our Reformed tradition, we know the will is bound by sin. God regenerates the heart, freeing the will so it can choose him.
But the choice must be real. The act of turning is the vital thing.
So applying this to our characters, the content of their nature, nice or nasty, is secondary. The direction of the will is primary.
Right. The question is, will Miss Bates offer her nasty nature to God? Will she say, Lord, I am a mess. I am anxious. I am judgmental. Take this broken machine and drive it for me.
That is an offering God accepts.
And will Dick offer his nice nature?
And arguably, it might be harder for Dick to do that.
Much harder.
Why?
Yeah.
Why is it harder for the nice guy to turn to God?
Because he doesn't feel the need. This leads to the section on the spiritual danger of being nice.
We usually think of niceness as a distinct advantage. We want our kids to be nice. We want our neighbors to be nice.
But Lewis warns it can be a trap.
He reinterprets the famous saying of Jesus, how hard it is for those with wealth to enter the kingdom.
We usually think of millionaires. We think of people with massive bank accounts. But Lewis expands that idea of wealth to include those who have an abundance of natural gifts.
Well endowed in personality, healthy, popular. If you have sound nerves, a good upbringing, you're good looking, and people like you, you face a specific spiritual danger.
Self-sufficiency.
You don't feel the need for a physician because you don't feel sick.
You ask, why drag God into it? You look at your life, and it works. You're a decent chap. You aren't an alcoholic, you don't cheat on your spouse, you pay your bills.
You mistake that natural luck for spiritual merit. You think, I'm good, when really you're just lucky.
It's the illusion of independence. I have everything I need, why do I need a savior?
Lewis even brings up the devil here. That stops you in your tracks.
It does. He points out that the devil was an archangel. His natural gifts, intelligence, strength, splendor, charisma were far above ours. He was better endowed than any human who has ever lived.
And yet he fell. Why?
Because of pride, because of that self-sufficiency.
So having a better nature doesn't make you closer to God. In fact, it might make you a more formidable rebel.
A nice rebel is still a rebel, and a nice rebel is harder to convince of their need for pardon. The bank robber knows he's done wrong. The philanthropist who ignores God has a harder time seeing his sin.
On the flip side, there is the advantage of the nasty. It sounds backward.
Yeah.
Why would being nasty, being broken, having a bad temper be an advantage?
Because the nasty people, the poor in spirit, often hit bottom faster. Lewis describes them as the lonely, warped, passionate, unbalanced people.
The people who just can't get their act together.
The people who are tripped up by their own brokenness constantly. When they try to be good, they fail immediately. They know their machinery is broken.
They can't pretend.
They can't just be nice and get by. So they learn in double quick time that they need help.
It is Christ or nothing.
That is the phrase, Christ or nothing. They don't have the luxury of the illusion of self-sufficiency. This explains why, historically, the church is full of people who society considers broken or undesirable.
The Pharisees hated this about Jesus. They looked at his disciples, fishermen, tax collectors, former prostitutes, and turned up their noses.
They said if there were anything in this religious movement, these awful people wouldn't be part of it. They expected the Messiah to attract the best people, the moral elite, the nice people.
But Jesus went for the lost sheep. The sick need a doctor, not the healthy.
And if you think you are healthy, you won't go to the doctor. That is the tragedy of the nice unbeliever. Their very wellness keeps them from the cure.
So, we have established that niceness is not the goal.
Mm.
It is good, like bread or sunshine, but it isn't salvation. So what is the goal?
Lewis moves to the idea of complete remaking, the winged horse analogy.
Let's look at this. This is a beautiful, but also kind of disturbing image. What's the difference between improvement and this remaking?
The standard view, the world's view, is that religion is about improvement. It's like taking a horse and teaching it to jump better. You want a better, stronger, more obedient horse.
Self-help with a religious veneer. A better you.
Yes, but the Christian view is not about teaching a horse to jump better. It is about mutating the horse into a winged creature, a Pegasus.
That is a fundamental change of species. It's not just a better horse, it's something else entirely.
God became man to turn creatures into sons. He wants to produce a new kind of man. Not just a nice man, but a new man.
But here's the visual that really sticks with me, the transition period. We love the idea of the winged horse soaring, but the biological process of growing wings would be horrific.
It would be awkward. Imagine you are watching a horse turn into a winged creature. At first, it doesn't look majestic. It looks gross.
The wings start as lumps on the shoulders.
Right. Big, ugly, swelling lumps. The horse probably feels pain. It moves awkwardly because its balance is off.
If you didn't know there were going to be wings, you'd look at that horse and say, that animal is deformed. It was better off before. Why did you ruin a perfectly good horse?
And isn't that what happens with new Christians sometimes?
Oh, all the time.
When the Holy Spirit begins to work on a person, things get messy. They might become more sensitive to sin, which makes them seem anxious or judgmental. They might struggle visibly with things they used to ignore.
They look awkward compared to the sleek, natural horse that is the well-adjusted atheist. The atheist is running the steeplechase perfectly. The Christian is stumbling around with lumps on their back.
But the end game isn't a jumping contest. The end game is flight. Once those wings are grown, that creature will soar over fences that the natural horse, no matter how well trained, could never jump.
We are playing a completely different game. We aren't trying to win the niceness competition. We are undergoing a metamorphosis.
And that process is messy, slow, and often misunderstood by the spectators. We have to be patient with the lumps.
This brings us to the final section of our deep dive, the solitude of judgment. Lewis pivots from looking at others, Miss Bates, Dick Firkin, the hypothetical Buddhist, and turns the camera right onto you, the listener.
He strips away the distractions. He warns us against looking for stupid and unsatisfactory Christians to validate our disbelief.
It's a delay tactic, isn't it? As long as I'm critiquing the church or pointing out the hypocrisies of the pastor or complaining about Miss Bates, I don't have to face God myself.
It is a smokescreen. Speculating about your neighbor's soul or relying on book chatter, what you read in the papers, is useless. Lewis says all of that will fade away.
He talks about the anesthetic fog of the real world.
We think this world, the cars, the job, the news, the noise, is the hard reality. But Lewis says it is a fog. It's a temporary distraction. And one day, it will lift.
And when it lifts, you will be left with the presence.
The presence. Palpable, immediate, unavoidable. You will be alone with him.
And in that moment, nobody will care what Miss Bates did. Nobody will care if the atheist neighbor was nice.
Lewis writes, one soul in the whole creation you do know, and it is the only one whose fate is placed in your hands.
That is heavy. It puts the responsibility squarely on you. It stops being an intellectual debate about sociology and becomes a terrifyingly intimate question.
What will you say in that silence? You cannot point to the hypocrites then. You cannot point to the nice atheists then. It is just you and the Holy One.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. What are the big takeaways for you listening today?
First, we need to distinguish between niceness and newness. Niceness is a gift of nature. Newness is a work of grace. Don't confuse the two. Just because something is shiny doesn't mean it's holy.
Second, stop judging the management by the machinery.
Yes, be charitable. You don't know what kind of broken equipment your neighbor or the person in the pew next to you is wrestling with. God judges the effort of the will, not just the polish of the personality.
And third, Recognize the danger of your own advantages.
If you are wealthy in natural gifts, if life is easy for you, beware. Do not let your natural goodness become a wall that keeps you from God.
Don't let your niceness be the thing that keeps you from grace.
And if you are poor, if you are broken and nasty, take heart. You are the very people Christ came to save. Your brokenness is your admission ticket.
That is a total reversal of how the world thinks, but it is the core of the gospel.
It really is.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that really struck me as we prepare this deep dive.
Go ahead.
If you are listening to this and you consider yourself a nice person, you pay your taxes, you help your friends, you are generally well-liked. I
Yeah.
want you to ask yourself, are you using God's own gifts as a defense against him? Are you holding up your niceness like a shield, saying, I don't need grace, look how good I am?
That is the ultimate tragedy. To use the king's gifts to declare independence from the king.
And conversely, if you are listening and you feel nasty, you feel broken, anxious, maybe even ashamed of your behavior, do you realize that your broken machinery might be your greatest advantage? It might be the very thing that drives you into the arms of the only one who can give you wings.
The laughs on the shoulders are just the beginning of the flight.
Well said. Thank you for walking through this with us today.
It was a pleasure.
And thank you to everyone listening. We will see you next time on Reformed Thinking.